Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Spring 2022 Change for Climate Lunchbox Series. Today's session is designed to inspire you to change for climate. My name is Heather Wheelaker, and I'm here with my colleague, Karen Young. Both of us work in the Planning and Environmental Services branch with the city. We are joined by two more colleagues from the same branch, Andrea Linsky and YC Ramirez, who I will introduce shortly. Just a reminder to you that today's session is being recorded. To begin, the City of Edmonton acknowledges the traditional land on which we reside is Treaty 6 territory. We thank the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, such as the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Nakota Sioux, and Blackfoot. We also acknowledge this as the Métis homeland and the home of one of the largest communities of Inuit south of the 60th parallel. It's a welcoming place for all people who come from around the world to share Edmonton as a home. Together, we call upon all of our collective honored traditions and spirits to work in building a great city for today and for future generations. So today you are going to hear stories about how the city, the community, and individuals are reducing greenhouse gas emissions, decreasing dependence on fossil fuels, and preparing for a changing climate. It's now my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Andrea Linsky. Andrea is a program manager in corporate climate management and rallies staff across the City of Edmonton organization to reduce emissions from the many buildings that we manage. We'll hear from Andrea first, and after Andrea, we'll hear from YC Ramirez, who supervises the Community Programs Unit, where she manages a number of staff to implement the energy transition strategy, as well as the adaptation strategy. And lastly, I'm going to share resources that you can tap into to improve your understanding about climate change and help you to commit to climate action. Andrea and YC, thank you so much for joining us today to inspire our audience with city success stories and programs. First, I'll welcome on Andrea. Andrea.
Thank you very much, Heather, for that warm introduction. Welcome everyone to our session today. I look forward to sharing with you about the work we're doing at the city. It's something that I'm very passionate about, and I'm always excited to share this information with others. So getting started here, I always like to make sure that everyone's on the same level of understanding of what I'm talking about. So I always like to start with this slide. And it talks about climate resilience at the City of Edmonton and what we define it as for both the community at large, but also for our civic operations, which is where my focus is on. So climate resilience is all about Edmonton being a city that's transitioning to a low carbon future, has clean air and water, and is adapting to a changing climate. And so for many of you on the call, you're probably quite familiar with the concept of mitigation versus adaptation, or I should say rather than versus, in conjunction with adaptation. Climate mitigation work that we do focuses on the actions we can do to mitigate or reduce our emissions that are causing climate change, whereas adaptation is really focusing on those items that are adapting to the risks of climate change. And so we have two key pieces of strategy here at the city that are for the community at large: the Community Energy Transition Strategy and the Climate Resilient Edmonton Adaptation Strategy. And these two governing pieces of strategy help us figure out how we move forward, what the pathway forward is. And so the emissions neutral, the big piece for me is that embedded within both of these documents are the key pieces of our that align with our corporate strategy as well. So the City of Edmonton, our operations, all of the buildings and services we provide are part of the greater community. And it's very important for us to be leading by example in the work that we do. So I'll start by focusing in on our mitigation work, and then I'll transition to a little bit on our adaptation work. First of all, the city is committed to being emissions neutral corporation by 2040. So that's 10 years in advance of the community at large. And that's an important part for us in being able to show that we're leading by example in the work that we do and that the rest of the community can get there too. Our emissions neutral operations by 2040 has a whole bunch of different actions that we have in moving forward in pathways, essentially. And they often align with the community's actions very similarly in a lot of ways. I'm sharing today with you work that we're doing right now on updating our corporate greenhouse gas management plan to reflect climate mitigation and adaptation and our new target of emissions neutral operations by 2040. So this is a bit of a sneak peek, a draft of the work that we're currently doing. As you can imagine, we have a lot of different operations at the city, but our buildings are a big part of our emissions. And so we have plans to reduce our emissions within our facilities. We have plans to work on our lighting, our primarily street lighting, to make those all LED. We're working on our overall fleet to take it to a zero emissions fleet, as well as the transit fleet. And so many of you have heard probably of the 40 electric buses that we currently have on the road and another 20 to come. And so it's expanding that program quite a bit as well. We have worked with our waste management team, particularly on our long hauling work and the landfills that we do have within the city's operations. We have a major program to install solar PV on city buildings, and hopefully some of you have seen the recent information that's come out through Changing for Climate on all of the new buildings that we're currently putting solar on. We look at pathways for adopting use of renewable natural gas and other low emissions fuels. We have an exciting RFP coming out very soon that will essentially result in the city procuring 100% green electricity for our civic operations, which is no small feat. And then finally, after we've sort of addressed all of those other pathways, we would turn towards carbon offsets if it's necessary. So this is sort of the overall strategy that we have at the city for focusing on our emissions neutral corporation. Some other pieces that I think are really important to sort of focus on is our climate resilient building policy, or climate resilience policy, C627, for those who like to read city policies. And this actually is a pretty transformational piece of policy at the city. It basically says that for all buildings that the city builds, so if you think fire halls, libraries, recreation centers, all of those types of facilities. From now on, all of them will be built to an emissions neutral building standard. So that's a big step in making sure that we don't have any incremental impact in our emissions going forward. We have tied to that other expectations around energy efficiency, specifically the actual thermal performance of the envelope of the buildings. We still require a LEED certification for all of our new buildings. And the other piece that's particularly exciting, I think, in this work is that we're now requiring that for all city-owned new buildings, we look at embodied carbon of the actual building. And while we don't have specific expectations on standards around that, for how much embodied carbon we can have, we are at least starting to calculate it, which is a first in Alberta for sure. And it was starting to build the capacity in industry to start understanding how much carbon goes into actually building the building, not just operating it. And of course, we have renewable energy requirements on our buildings. It's very difficult to meet an emissions neutral building standard without actually putting solar on your facilities. The other piece, that was all for our new buildings. So that basically takes care of all the stuff we're doing in the future, but boy, do we have a lot of existing buildings at the city. And so I think that's the other piece that we're really trying to focus in on here, is over 50% of our current operational emissions come from the buildings that we run. And that's quite a bit if you think of the fact that we also run LRTs and buses and all of these other big heavy loads. And so we're currently in the process of doing major work around defining the scope of energy retrofits to get us to deeper retrofits in these buildings, as well as developing an emissions neutral and climate resilient portfolio framework that will help us figure out exactly how we get this existing group of buildings to emissions neutral. As I mentioned, we have a big solar PV program at the city, and we have about a few facilities already with solar panels on them. They've been around for quite a while, and one of our most recent additions is the convention center. I'm sure if you've been by it lately, you can see them all built into the glass there. But we also have an additional 10 projects that are underway right now, and even more coming hopefully in the next year or so. So you'll start to see solar systems on a lot of our facilities. Other programs that we're leading the way in at the city are the city's building energy benchmarking program, which is publicly available for all commercial building owners in the city. But the city is sort of leading in the sense that I think about half the buildings in the program are city-owned facilities. Maybe a little bit less now, but basically all of our large facilities are being benchmarked against other buildings in the city. And it gives us a really great ability to be able to see how we're doing performance-wise and sort of continue to push ourselves in performance at the city. We also are participating in BOMA Best certification. So for those of you who know LEED and maybe haven't heard of BOMA, the way I always describe it is BOMA Best is like LEED for existing buildings. So if you want to look at how your operations work overall and making sure that they're sustainable. We have 20 facilities that have been recently certified, so that's very exciting. And we have 10 more to come in this upcoming year here. So we're quickly moving on the actions to get all of these buildings into the system. And the nice thing is that it allows us to look beyond just energy and emissions. This is where we really start to look at waste management, water use, hazardous materials, and getting the tenants quite engaged. And that's one of my personal favorite pieces of the BOMA Best program, is working with the people who actually work in the buildings and talking to them about the things that they can do to help improve our environmental performance. And so as a last little piece here, just wanted to touch on a lot of the adaptation work that we're starting to do for our buildings, our city-owned assets. And so one thing that we're really working on is how do we start considering the changing climate for our assets, and not just our assets, but also our operations, and how do we prepare for a very different climate future. And so we're just beginning this work in some areas. And one of the big pieces that we've recently done is a bit of an internal costing study to understand how much impact financially it's going to take us to prepare different asset groups for a changing climate. So we've looked at things like our city buildings, our transportation and fueling infrastructure, our LRT system, and our waste management facilities. And we've done an analysis to see how flooding, wildfire, extreme heat, and high winds, and extreme cold, actually, we've just added that item, will be impacting those asset groups, and what kind of work we need to do to prepare for them. Some of them are definitely financially significant. Other ones are more operational changes on how we actually change the way that we operate as a city to prepare for these climate impacts. So that's it. Those are the big pieces that we're working on right now in the development of our revised climate management plan. And it's always, personally, as a citizen of Edmonton, I'm always keen to see that all of this work is underway at the city as well in all of these areas. So that's it for me. Maybe I'll pass it on to YC for her presentation.
Thanks so much, Andrea. Great information. I always learn whenever you do a presentation. So thank you for that. Andrea presented on what the city is doing with our internal buildings, the energy transition programs that I have the privilege of working with colleagues on is more community focused. And so this is based on the community energy transition strategy and action plans that we have. And I wanted to just give a high level indication of what programs we have available, mainly in rebates, and then just some of the successes that we've seen. So we've got 3 different areas that we work in, and we're going to first talk about the commercial side, and then we'll talk about residential, which might impact lots of you, and hopefully you've known about it or have participated, or maybe will participate. And then we'll talk more about community mobilization. So first up on the commercial side, we have a program called Building Energy Benchmarking. This program, what it's meant to do is really highlight all the buildings across the city who participate in an energy audit, so that we have a better understanding across the whole city of what's happening with our buildings, what emissions levels there are, and what actions they've taken. And so this program invites commercial property owners to participate, and they have access to a rebate program that gets them a really high level energy audit. It's called the ASHRAE Level 2, and it gives very detailed information about what is happening within their building. Over the course of 5 years that we've had the program, we've had 721 buildings participate, and that is really outstanding, getting lots of information from all our participants. The second program that we have is called Building Energy Retrofit, and you get to this through the building energy benchmarking. They're kind of built on one another. But this program is after you've learned about what's happening in your building and potentially what would be most effective in decreasing your emissions and increasing your efficiency. There are some rebates that we have available to help commercial building owners do just that. An application-based process, and what are eligible are things like HVAC systems and windows and lighting. Many of the things that Andrea spoke about is what we hope to support and encourage in our commercial buildings. So lots of applications through. The buildings have to be over 500 or 5,000 square feet. So it's a pretty big undertaking, especially when you're looking at towers and such. So we've got about 120 applications and 90 projects that are on the go. Really happy about that. The other piece is looking on a leadership level. It's called the Corporate Climate Leaders Program. And what it is it's really establishing a network of supportive leaders in the business community who share our perspectives on climate and resilience. So they come together and really commit in their own particular companies a commitment to looking at energy and transition pieces, and also what they can do with their teams or their staff about climate resilience. And they get together, we run different cohorts, and in each of the cohorts we offer workshops to talk about what things are being done, who else is part of the group, and share plans. So that's a really good networking opportunity for our leaders. So now moving on to the residential side. These are rebates that we have available right now on our website, Change for Climate, that anybody can access when they're looking at their own homes. So the first one is called the Home Energy Retrofit Accelerator, looking at a number of different eligible installations to decrease emissions and increase efficiencies, from insulation, windows, water, space heating. We try to work with homeowners to take a look at which projects would be most beneficial based on budget and based on what they're hoping to do. Have a bonus if you do additional retrofits to your property. And so we've got a huge, Edmontonians have a huge appetite for this program, over 2,100 applications and 1,700 projects so far. The next one is called Solar Rebate. And so anybody interested in solar, we've got a rebate program for solar PV. We have a map that says My Heat, and you can look up your address and it'll give you an indication of based on the direction of where the sun is, what the capacity is for solar on your home. And then from that, you can apply for up to roughly 15% of the cost of solar for your home. On the community mobilization outreach component, this workshop that Heather and Karen have organized is one of the things that we do. Lots of outreach events, different committees where we engage and we provide information for interested citizens and organizations and groups who want to learn more about what can be done and what's available. We have the website that has tons and tons of visitors every year, and there's a lot of work being done now to provide some updated content as we transition out of energy transition and into some more climate adaptation information. You're going to start to see some changes to that website. A lot of social media content out there to engage and encourage Edmontonians to participate. And I'm sure Heather can provide much more information. We've got a newsletter as well that provides tons and tons of information. That is part and parcel of the entire community programs that we have, always looking to understand where communities at in terms of participating, and we really want to learn, what is most suitable for education pieces, but more importantly, what will help Edmontonians move towards more energy transition actions. And I have two kind of promos for you, just to let you know. This year alone, we're going to have what's called the Clean Energy Improvement Program. It's a 2-year pilot that allows Edmontonian homeowners to look at a funding support for retrofitting their home. So all the energy transition elements are available under that program. And what would happen is you apply, and with that application, the funding to upfront the costs for all the mitigation work would be supported and then placed on your taxes. And so it would be a payback system. So that is hopefully going to be announced fairly soon. We're ready to go. Our agreements are in place and the funding is in place for that. And the second piece that's really, really interesting, especially working through the pandemic as we have, is the electric vehicle show, or expo as it's going to really showcase what is available with respect to electric vehicles and alternative modes of transportation. Look forward to that and more information and promotion. That'll be in September. I believe it's the weekend of the 24th. And so invite you all to come to that. This is my contact information. As I said, really interested in hearing from you. And so if you have a few minutes, I'd love to have a conversation, and you can get a hold of me at email address or a phone.
Great. Thank you so much, YC, and thank you, Andrea, as well. So it's now my turn to share stories about individual efforts to inspire you further. You've heard about what the city is doing in terms of internally to our operations, also programs that are available to the community, and I'll focus a little bit more on individuals. So you're familiar with the brand Change for Climate, but what is it exactly? Change for Climate is a call to action. It's the public information arm of the city's climate programs, grants, and rebates. It's a blog site where citizens like you share what they're up to. It's our brand for moving information out to citizens. It's a call to action. It includes stories of change, where residents will submit their stories to us, telling us how they are changing for climate. And the city also shares stories about how we're changing for climate too. And if you have a story to share, please send it our way. It's a blog of inspiring stories of citizens taking action. For example, Lynn, whose decision to buy a home was based on the home's energy efficiency, its energy saving appliances, and its added insulation. Or Benny, who cleared all of his gutters of debris, set up rain barrels, landscaped his yard to drain water away from his foundation, and packed his valuables up in the basement into waterproof bins, just in case a downpour leads to flooding conditions. You can read a story about Bill, who converted an old double stroller into a trailer to pull behind his bicycle for trips to the market, and is converting their front yard into a raised garden. Or Elva, who has had an EnerGuide inspection to see what upgrades would deliver the best energy savings. She also hangs her clothes out to dry in summer, washes clothes in cold water, and uses a fan instead of air conditioning when her curtains aren't enough to block the sun's heat. Or you can read about Colette, who purchased a used electric vehicle. Or the story in today's Change for Climate news about a homeowner named Jim, who described a desire to put a sleeping bag over his entire home. And that idea was turned into a made in Alberta solution. On the blog site, you will also find links to our award-winning series, Renewables, complete with 3 riveting seasons of inspiration. And Karen is going to put some links into the chat for you. Community organizations can inspire change too, and you will see them promoted through Change for Climate. The annual Eco-Solar Home Tour occurs every June, and citizens just like you open their homes so others might learn and discover and ask questions of homeowners who have stepped up to the climate challenge in meaningful and innovative ways. Solar Alberta offers lectures and courses and events, and their newsletters highlight many ways that you too can take climate action at home. It walks you through how to secure solar PV, how to find a contractor, and much, much more. Green Energy Futures is podcasts and videos and blogs about climate change solutions at the local, provincial, national level, and even beyond. So again, check your chat for links to those external organizations. Change for Climate is a call to action. There are a variety of actions to choose from and commit to, and we want every Edmontonian to commit to at least one action. When you join the movement, you can set up a profile with your climate actions, and you can also add your own actions too. Many actions you'll see on the website are rated as a 1 on a scale of 1 to 5 in terms of their impacts on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The actions become more challenging as the impact rises, but if more people do actions rated 1 or 2, the planet can still win. Also, when you sign up to commit to an action, you can see how many others have also committed to that same action. In this example, over 1,100 fellow citizens use fans instead of air conditioning to stay cool. When you scroll down on the spectrum of actions page, you will notice there are a number of bright green actions. These have been submitted by citizens just like you, but have not been rated yet. You can sign up for and commit to these actions as well. On the changeforclimate.ca blog, you will also find a tab for programs. YC just reviewed many of the programs offered by the city, from rebates to training and support offered by the Corporate Climate Leaders Program, and so much more. But those looking for more action ideas, scroll down on this programs page to Change for Climate Tools. On the tools page, you're going to find links to guidebooks, a home energy toolkit available to borrow from the library, videos with how-to explanations, and a link to an interactive climate resilient home. To learn more about how Edmonton's climate is expected to change, explore edmonton.ca/climate resilience. In addition to showcasing Edmonton's future climate, it includes links to flood-proofing your home and even a teacher's guide. If you'd like to learn more about projected climate changes in an easy-to-read manner, scroll through Edmonton's Climate Change Almanac at edmonton.ca/climate almanac. Change for Climate includes information for individuals, homeowners, renters, businesses, and communities. Information is presented in a variety of ways to appeal to your learning style, from videos to stories to newsletters, guides, and much, much more. Capacity building, we offer that through workshops, displays, walking tours, and webinars like these. And support for action is offered through research grants, community grants, and individual incentives and rebates. An annual public perceptions and attitude surveys tells us that Edmontonians are increasingly concerned about climate change. The latest survey, conducted in June of 2021, found that 75% of Edmontonians agree climate change is a concern, and this is up 1% from 2020. 77% think we need to act now, and that's up 2%. And 74% agree that climate change is caused mostly by human activities, up 3% from 2020. This is the 5th year for this survey, and it increasingly shows that climate behaviors are becoming more and more aligned with our attitudes. A 6th survey will be conducted this June. For full results, you can visit the Change for Climate blog, and Karen, again, will put a link in the chat. So as you can see, many Edmontonians are involved in taking action for climate change. Andrea reviewed how the city is demonstrating leadership, walking the talk. YC shared numerous programs offered by the city that are giving you that extra incentive that you need to retrofit your home and upgrade your space. And I've shared with you some of the ways the city supports citizens to learn more about local climate projections and actions that so many of you are already taking to prepare for a changing climate, to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and to transition away from fossil fuel use by switching to renewables. So at this point, we will move to questions and answers. Coming from a place of interest in the water energy nexus, I am curious how water management, conservation, reuse, recycling are incorporated into the strategies presented. So water and energy combined.
Yeah, great question. So I can speak primarily to our corporate actions, as that's my expertise. I am relatively sure that they are included in the adaptation and mitigation work that are done at the greater community level. There are bits and pieces of that definitely woven into it. For our corporate level, a big piece of one of the major changes that we made recently is for all of the work that we do around energy auditing our existing facilities, we require that full water audits are also done on those facilities. And so that's a big piece of us giving us the base information that's required to be able to make informed decisions that impact both water and energy use in our facilities. I think another piece that impacts things is within our new construction. We very consciously chose to continue to use the LEED certification program for our buildings, even though they're also emissions neutral in their new construction. And a big portion of that, or a big part of that reasoning, was because we didn't want to lose the impact that program has on helping us make intelligent decisions around water using equipment in our buildings. So that's the primary way that we're doing it, seeing sort of that reflected right now. The other really interesting thing is through the BOMA BEST program, as we roll that program out in our facilities, we're becoming much more aware of our water related actions in the ongoing operations of facilities. And we're actually developing water management plans as well, and in those particular facilities that are BOMA BEST certified. And it's definitely leading to new discussions that we haven't had before. So more and more impact, I would say, as we sort of proceed on that one.
Great, thank you. We're going to try something new in our webinar today and open up the mic so that you can share a story of what you are doing to change for climate. The purpose of your story would be to inspire others who are listening or who will view the recording later on and just share back what is it that you're doing to change for climate. So, okay, thank you so much, Melanie. That's terrific. And I think turning a front yard into a garden may not seem common, but I think it's becoming more and more common across our city as we discover that, the front yard will grow food just as well as our backyard. Great, thank you so much, Christopher. And so not owning a vehicle is one thing, and using your voice is also very important. And I often hear our City Hall school teacher telling the children that she works with in elementary school to use your voice, and those young people certainly do. And I encourage everyone here as adults that we need to use our voice too. So thank you for that. And thanks everyone for just for being on the call today and learning more about what the city's doing and also what you can do too. There are, of course, many ways for you to stay informed about the city's climate change work. So be sure to continue to follow us, or to follow us if you don't already. And finally, thank you again to my colleagues, Andrea Linsky and YC Ramirez, for sharing your time and your expertise with us today. You've provided us with lots of information about the city and what we're doing here at the city, across the community, to reduce our carbon footprint. And thank you again, my colleague Karen, for handling all of the logistical pieces to make today happen. And to you, our audience, I hope we will see you again at an upcoming session. So thanks very much, everyone. I wish you a terrific afternoon.